right, hello everybody. Welcome to our Live at Lunch. Today is Wednesday, and we are going to be talking about a very special animal that we have here at the Nature Center. Again, I'm Danielle, and this is Andrew, and we have Greg behind the camera who might be asking us some questions. So if you hear a voice from beyond, it's just Greg checking in with us. So if you tuned into our story from this morning, our Instagram story, we posted a little joke about owls. The joke was, why was the owl sad during quarantine?
And the answer is because he was owl alone.
But we might be sad being alone, isolated from our friends and family during quarantine, but owls actually are not bothered by being all by themselves. They actually prefer to be by themselves. They are what we call solitary animals, which means that they don't live with any of their family members after they're old enough to leave the nest and be out on their own. They pretty much spend all of their time alone after that.
That's right. And they'll just come back together during mating season, and once that's over, then they're on their own again.
Yep. Once their babies are all grown up, then they're off.
So this is Molotto. Molotto is a boy, and he is called an Eastern Screech Owl. And you can see he's very tiny, but Molotto is actually all grown up. This is a very small species of owl, and he's about 10 years old. And Eastern Screech Owls live all over the United States on the eastern half, so you can find them here in New York. And we actually got Molotto. He's a rescue animal. So when he was just a baby, he fell out of his nest. We're not really sure what the reason was. Maybe he was trying to learn how to fly. But somebody found him in a thorn bush below his nest. And he had gotten some pretty bad cuts and scrapes from those thorns, and he had some infections. And so he was brought to us, and we were able to nurse him back to health. But the reason we can't let him go, even though he's seemingly pretty healthy now, every once in a while, from those injuries, he gets a puffy eye that causes one of his eyes to close for a couple weeks at a time. And so they determined that if his eye was closed for a couple weeks, he might have trouble hunting in the wild. So we keep him here at the Nature Center. We feed him, we give him love, and we use him as an educational animal, and everybody loves him.
Mm-hmm. So owls, like Molotto, are called birds of prey, which means that they are birds that hunt and eat other smaller animals. And it is actually illegal to have birds of prey in captivity unless they are not strong enough to go back into the wild for whatever reason. So Andrew just told the story about why Molotto is here, and he's a perfect example of an animal that is allowed to be living in captivity and used for education because he's not strong enough to go out and live on his own. And we actually have 4 birds of prey that are injured and not able to go into the wild. We have 2 bald eagles, we have a great horned owl, and we have a red-tailed hawk that all used to live in the wild and now have to live here because they're not strong enough.
That's right. All birds of prey in the United States are protected by the government. And even if they are injured, you do still have to have proper permitting to keep them and take care of them.
Mm-hmm. So I noticed, Andrew, that Molotto is awake right now. And I thought that usually owls are nocturnal, which
That's
means
true.
that they sleep at night and they sleep during the day and are awake at night.
That is true. Most owls are nocturnal, and they do sleep during the day. Molotto is awake right now simply because we woke him up. But being in captivity, he has sort of adjusted, and a lot of animals will. They adjust to your schedule because we feed them during the day. We're around making noise during the day. So whereas in the wild he might be sleeping more at night, during the day, right? We're both making that mistake.
Yeah.
In captivity, he may be actually spending more time asleep at night than he would normally do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things on Molotto's body, or what we call adaptations, that help Molotto to be a successful nocturnal animal. So I know I wouldn't be very good at finding a mouse in the pitch black in the middle of the night to eat. But you can see Molotto has really big eyes, and his eyes are adjusted to being able to see and hunt in the dark.
Yeah.
So some owls are able to see a little tiny mouse or a little tiny rabbit, something that they would want to eat, from about the length of a football field above the ground in the pitch black, right?
That's right. So owls have excellent night vision. And just because he has good night vision doesn't mean he can't see during the day. Owls have excellent day vision as well. But they do have the right kind of eyes to see with very little light. And this does help them to hunt at night. And one thing you may notice about owls, they can't move their eyes. Molotto does not move his eyes like we can. He has to move his head if he wants to look in a different direction. And this is actually because his eyes are so big that they actually don't fit inside of his skull, of his head. And so they kind of bulge out, and so because of that, he can't move them. You can watch, he'll follow my finger, but he moves his whole head. He can't turn his eyes.
And he can move his head almost in a full circle around his body, about
Yes.
300
Well,
degrees, right?
Yeah, almost a full circle. So it is a myth that owls can turn their head all the way around. That would be 360 degrees. He can go, like Danielle said, almost a full circle. So about 3/4 of the way. So he can turn this way. He can look all the way behind him. He can come around this way. And he uses those very strong eyes and the ability to turn his neck to help him find his prey. But one thing that he does to find his prey is actually use his ears. Right? Something like a hawk that comes out during the day, or eagles, they really rely solely on their eyes to find their food. You will usually see hawks flying way up in the sky, just sort of gliding around, looking down at the ground for a squirrel or a chipmunk, maybe a rabbit. Owls don't really do that. They kind of hang out in trees, and they use their ears and they listen. Their ears are actually more powerful than their eyes. And so they'll listen for animals scurrying on the ground or flying around. And once they hear them, they can pinpoint exactly where that noise is coming from, turn their head in that direction, see them with their eyes, and go for them. Oh, so his ears, it kind of looks, he has these two little tufts right here above his eyes. Those are actually just feathers that stick up. His ears, just like ours, are behind his eyes. It's kind of right there. You can't see them because they're covered with feathers. And it's just a hole. He doesn't have the floppy part on the outside of his ear like we do. But it's very, very powerful hearing. And he actually has one ear that is higher up on his head and one ear that's lower down. And this unevenness of his ears actually helps him to pinpoint where noises are coming from better than we would be able to do.
So he uses his ears to hunt. He uses his eyes to hunt. But Molotto obviously doesn't have hands like we have, which we can use to eat our food. So he has his feet to grab his food.
That's right. They're a little bit hard to see. I could turn them. So birds of prey have special feet. We call them talons. Well, their claws are called talons. They're very long, they're very sharp, and the feet themselves are very, very strong. Owls and hawks and eagles can exert a lot of force with their feet. And it's very important when they're grabbing an animal. These birds are very, very strong. They can carry animals that are heavier than they are. And so those powerful, strong grip of their feet is important so they don't drop their food while they're flying away.
Does it hurt you right now that he's standing on you?
It doesn't, no. So Molotto he's not upset, he's not tense. Even though he does have sharp claws, he is not putting really any pressure on my finger, so it does not hurt.
Very cool.
Yeah, and you can see, actually, Danielle, I'm holding this little leather strap here.
Mm-hmm.
This is called a jess, And so that is just loosely tied around his ankle. And this is something that falconers use with their trained birds. And it's just simply something that I can hold on to, so if he gets spooked and tries to fly away, we won't lose him.
Especially for Molotto, who's lived in captivity for his whole life. He's not the strongest flyer, so it might not be safe for him to try and fly on his own. So it's for his safety and so that we don't lose him.
That's right.
So we've been talking a lot about how Molotto hunts and what he likes to eat, so we actually brought some of his food here. Usually he would eat things that are a little bit bigger, maybe small mice or small chipmunks, even other small birds, but just for the sake of showing everybody how Molotto eats, we brought another type of prey with us today. This is a cricket. It is alive, and we are going to feed it to Molotto.
Maybe. Oh, there you go.
Oh, he dropped it.
Now, when we're hand feeding Molotto like this, he'll take it right from us. And you can see he's having a little trouble because owls don't really catch things with their mouth. And neither do hawks or eagles. They catch their prey with their talons. And then once they have it secure in their feet, they'll use their beak to start eating it.
He seems like a little confused by it right now.
Well, he is nocturnal. Maybe he's just a little sleepy right now.
Here.
This is kind of like a midnight snack for us.
Come on, Molotto.
But in the wild, these owls, because they're so tiny, they will actually eat a lot of insects, especially a lot of flying insects like moths.
He bit it. Oh, no, it's dead. Maybe that's why he
But they will eat larger things as well, like Danielle said, mice, bats even.
Oh, there we go.
There, down the hatch. Frogs, small little lizards and snakes. They eat all kinds of things. Unfortunately, because he's so small, he is also a prey. So one of the animals that would hunt him, ironically, is actually a larger owl, like a great horned owl.
So if you see Molotto's feathers, I don't know, maybe if you can turn him, you can see that the color and the pattern of his feathers is really good for camouflage, which means that he can blend in really easily with some of the things in his environment. So this is the kind of owl that, if you think about an owl in a drawing or a painting, you see them in the little hole of a tree, a little hollowed out part of a tree. This is the type of owl that actually would live in that part of the tree. And you can see that the colors of his feathers would keep him really safe in that kind of habitat, because when he's in a tree, it's almost impossible to see him.
That's right.
So especially when he's sleeping during the day, he knows that just by the way that his body looks, he can be pretty safe while he sleeps while it's bright out, because he blends right in with the trees that he lives in.
And an interesting fact, most owls actually don't make their own nests in the traditional sense. Like you said, some owls, and it's kind of a stereotype, they live in the hole of a tree, but some owls will actually steal their nests from other birds. So like a great horned owl often will steal a nest from red-tailed hawks or other smaller hawks, and they're able to do so because they're bigger, stronger birds.
Wow. That's not very nice. But it's the circle of life. So if we don't have any more questions, I think we're going to say goodbye. Before we go, we'll show you how Molotto is, even though he's a wild animal, he loves to be pet, and he has sort of a spot that he loves to be pet, just like maybe your dog at home does. So if you get him right on the back of the neck, he just really enjoys that. You can see the happiness on his face. He's just totally chill whenever we pet him right there. The eyes are rolling back. Really, really cute.
So we do have a couple of questions, guys. They're asking, what are owl pellets?
that's
a
a
great
good
question.
question.
Yeah. So when owls eat an animal, they eat the whole thing. They don't just eat the meat like we tend to do. They eat the bones, they eat the fur, and these things they can't digest. So they eat the whole thing. The meat and the fat sort of gets digested in their belly. Those bones and the fur actually get compressed into a tiny little pellet, and then they cough it back up.
Yeah. So
they're
they
pretty
have-
popular in schools too. A lot of schools will do little owl pellet dissections. You can find
Yeah,
all the
it's
little
pretty
bones and
cool.
actually figure out what animal that owl ate.
Yeah. So they actually have 2 different compartments where they digest their food, right? So we just eat our food, it goes all down to one place, but their bodies have developed to know that they can't digest parts of their food, so it actually gets separated inside their body, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah. And we tend to just say owl pellets, probably because they're the most popular, but all birds of prey actually produce pellets. Our eagles, our hawks make pellets as well.
Mm-hmm.
So just a couple other questions that came in, which I can answer. People are asking whether or not you'll be able to see Mulatto anytime soon. And Mulatto does live inside the nature center with us. And so coming onto the property while we're closed, you're not going to be able to see Mulatto. But of course, as soon as we're back open, we're hoping that we can invite everybody inside to see him. Another question, how long do owls live?
Oh, that's a great question. It does vary depending on the species, but Mulatto here can live anywhere from 20 to 25 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that other question there, guys, no, we're not open, and we do anticipate or hope to be open sometime soon, but we're waiting on the news.
Yes. So you can't see Mulatto right now because he lives inside, but we do have a great horned owl which lives outside. So our property is still open. If you were to come to walk on our trails or just be outside, have a little picnic or something, you could see our great horned owl, who is much bigger than Mulatto. Yeah, she's at least 3 or 4 times the size of Mulatto. We also do have 2 bald eagles and a red-tailed hawk that are outside as well. So if you are really into birds of prey and you want to come see some, those are the 3 species, but the 4 birds that we have out here that you would be able to see. But Mulatto, unfortunately, is inside with us. So once we reopen, then you can come and visit him.
We also have our raven Zhao Zhao and our barnyard animals, sheep and goats and chickens that are outside as well.
Yes, so if you tuned in yesterday, you met some of our barnyard animals. So that's all the stuff that you can come and see right now. We're hoping to be open as soon as possible. Get some people back in here to meet our animals. They miss everybody. So, all right. So we are gonna say goodbye for the day. But thank you so much to everybody who tuned in and submitted questions. We'll be back again here tomorrow doing a snake feeding. So for any of our reptile fans, we'll be feeding one of our ball pythons tomorrow. Remember that we have a GoFundMe donation page at the link in our Instagram bio. You can also get to it through our Facebook page. So any small donation counts. We really appreciate it during this tough time. And we hope everybody is staying safe and healthy at home, and that we can see everybody very soon. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.